We are still talking about Scott Frost. Did his epic PR fail further taint his own Nebraska legacy? That's next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Yes, Scott Frost. We're gonna talk about it again. I'd like to quickly talk about the reaction to this, because over any other time prior to this time, when people talked about Scott Frost around here, this is of course after he was fired. You hear all of this stuff about how people just don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't think. Just move on. Admittedly, we did get that a lot in our YouTube comments yesterday, which I was looking at a little bit this morning. But I have sensed generally there is less of that this time. Because for whatever reason, this Scott Frost thing struck a chord with people. Because he, well, number one, didn't take accountability again. And stuck his foot in his mouth a little bit. And number two, directly pointed at the program as being, quote unquote, the wrong job. So I feel like people have bitten back a little bit harder this time, Mitch. And we'll get into a variety of different things here in this segment. But that's one of the things that I've felt coming off of this particular instance.
My sense here in being out and about in Omaha this week and on social media and on the phone, I've heard from people who I have not heard from about Nebraska football in a while.
Yeah.
I've heard from people who were pretty closely connected to Scott Frost in his time at Nebraska, who have messaged or called and basically just been like, what is he doing? Why would you do this? And the feedback from Nebraska fans generally seems to be harsh, or more harsh now even than when he was fired, or when he was going through some of the stuff that he went through to get himself fired. Now, you could find an individual moment in the Frost run at Nebraska, like the onside kick in Ireland, where I think the temperature was more hot than it is at this moment. But overall, people knew that like he didn't want to fail, that he was trying to win, even though he got in his own way more often than not. But and I think there was some understanding that maybe you don't find within fan bases at other schools. Let's just say that. Yeah. I don't want to stereotype a specific conference like the SEC and say their fans have less tolerance for coaches.
Yeah.
And even places in the Big Ten. Nebraska fans are pretty tolerant. And they were pretty tolerant, I would say, in relative terms towards Scott Frost, in large part because he is one of them. And what he did, I think, this week with these comments that he made was give an indicator or separate himself and say, I am no longer one of you. This was the wrong place for me. I'm stepping aside. Like, okay, if that's the way you want it to be, then the vibe that I get is that the gloves are off and we're no longer going to treat you with those kind of,
Yeah. He always got a little bit of
grace. He always extended grace. Yes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you went through it all yesterday. You'd be hard pressed to. I mean, it went so, or maybe it was. Maybe I saw a clip from Matt Schick, who had a good kind of rundown of things on his show yesterday. Yeah, and he talked about like, hey, it was a disaster. I mean, he went 16-31. He got more time than he should have been afforded, and it was a graceful, like as graceful as it could have been, given the way that Nebraska feels about itself as a program, it's a really, really, there's high expectations here. There was obviously high expectations for him, and it went so epically terrible. But considering all of those circumstances on the way out, it was just like, yeah, dang, and that's because people have a reverence for him because of what he did in his playing career and him being a native son and all those things. Like you said, this episode now, like, I think it was always going to be difficult to find closure in this situation, especially how he had kind of approached it before. Maybe this kind of represents that a little bit, because that bridge is clearly burned now with Nebraska. It's not like, we could compare it to what other coaches said on the way out the door. But this one takes direct aim at like, the fundamental, parts of the program. It is the job, right? It is the place. It is the things that are inherent to it, not about John Eichhorst, not about a boss or an athletic director, although he did make those things as well. It's a little different this time.
Yeah, let's talk about that, like, in for the sake of comparison. So I wrote about Frost yesterday, and it was, I will say, somewhat begrudging on my part to even wade into those waters. We covered it from the news angle on Tuesday after Frost made the comments in his it's like a semi one-on-one kind of interview situation with The Athletic. And so, of course, our company wrote an article about what he said, and I contributed to that. But there was such a strong response from Nebraska fans, and I think fans around college football. I think other coaches see this and look at it, and I know other coaches see this and look at it and are like, "What? Come on, man! Like, get over it. It's been almost 3 years."
Yeah, you just keep your mouth shut, kind of like that's kind of the thing in college football.
I kind of wanted to leave it there and say, all right, this is July. Let's move on. But there was enough of a heated response that there was a need for me to kind of weigh in with a column that I posted yesterday midday. It was right after I was on your show on 1620 talking about it, Connor, and again, that was one that just drew a lot of attention. It was about accountability and his inability to take responsibility for his failures and perhaps what that might mean for him moving forward at UCF, because he's the same guy. Some say he's a different guy at UCF, but underneath it there is the same person who can be bitter about things if they don't go in his direction. So what if things don't go his direction now that UCF is in the Big 12? What are they going to get? What are they going to see? And the comments that were posted on that story and the social media feedback when I tweeted it has been as harsh as I think we've ever seen anything directed at a former Nebraska or current Nebraska head coach. So it's interesting to compare this with Bo Pelini, who was the standard for getting upset and going out in a ball of flames. Immediately after he was fired in 2014, Bo held the team meeting with the Nebraska players and torched the administration at Nebraska.
He called the athletic director some things.
Yeah, and that was directed at one person. There were times where Bo wasn't kind to the Nebraska fan base, and he did that.
Notoriously, yes.
And then kept his job.
Yeah.
And I think it created some battle scars on both sides. But maybe this is different now. Maybe bear with me here, and this is a theory I have. Maybe it's different now. Maybe people are willing to be more angry at Frost over this episode than they ever got with Pelini. One, because that was just like the nature of his personality, and you knew that. And two, because I think fans feel a little bit less vulnerable in this moment, 3 years removed from Scott Frost with Matt Rule in the chair. Matt Rule would never, ever, ever say the kinds of things publicly that Frost said this week about Nebraska. With Bo and his exit, and even when he said the things that were caught on tape about the fans, everything was very raw. And the AD at the time did not inspire confidence in Nebraska fans. You expected Pelini to act emotionally, and he did. So
yeah,
I think
you could understand Bo's gripe, right? Like,
yeah.
I get it. I maybe not with the fans thing, but that was a product. When he said that in 2011, things were starting to get hot, and then by the time it came out, obviously it sat in a very, very different place. And then after he got fired in 2014, it was a mess. That was a messy situation, and he had won basically in spite of all that stuff. So like I said, you kind of understood where he was coming from. I don't want to do necessarily revisionist history on Bo, but obviously the difference.
Oh, come on, that's fun.
It's fun, but people do have a different sense of him now because 10 years later, Nebraska hasn't won anything of significance since Bo has left, and so his career has aged really well.
Yeah.
So the context is different. But he, that is the difference between the two. He won, and that does change a lot around it. And like I said, 10 years later, Nebraska hasn't really done much. And that's the thing. Like you try to put yourself in Scott's shoes a little bit, and you're like, man, you had every chance, every opportunity to do this thing, and there's no, there's no kind of responsibility taken in any of it, and there was no winning on that side of it. So it's I think they do have a lot in common in the sense of people react to them. They are emotional. They drudge up emotions in the fan base of Nebraska, but man, it is they definitely approach it from different places as well.
I think
if they had a beer together, I think they'd have a lot to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, it's been crickets from Nebraska related to this episode. You're not going to hear anything from Troy Dannon or Matt Rule, even a cryptic tweet. Nothing's going to come from them on this.
No, too dangerous.
We'll see if there's any kind of like a indirect reference to it when Dannon and Rule get to Las Vegas in now less than 2 weeks for Big Ten Media Day. It's still going to be on people's mind. I'm sure there'll be buzz. The subject is going to be floating around among the core of Nebraska-based people, both in the athletic department and in the media who are there in Las Vegas. So it'll get talked about. Definitely won't be talked about, I wouldn't think, on the record by the head coach and the administration. But yeah, this is going to stick with Scott for a while. I think this leaves a mark. I think that this is going to impact the way that Nebraska people and Nebraska fans view him moving forward. If before this week they were ready to wish him well and in some way cheer for his success, that's going to become a bit more difficult now that he's said these things 3 years later.
Undoubtedly. More for Big 12 Media Days on the other side, but we turn our attention to a different coach. Another coach who always entertains us when we return on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, a word from our friends from the FanDuel Sportsbook, where summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game feel more exciting. Say you're watching a Major League Baseball game that takes place in Kansas City and you're interested in one certain player who hits a home run. Now, you can't do over-under distances on that particular home run, but let's just say if you had the over on 460 feet last night for a Jack Caglione home run, that would be a good thing. But I don't think you could hit that. Just a home run or not a home run.
We'll suggest it.
Yeah, on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Just one of the options you have. There are plenty, whether it be over-unders, the nerfies people always get into in baseball, soccer, golf, whatever floats your boat. FanDuel has it for you. Same game parlays available for you, live betting as well. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or head to FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started.
All right, welcome back. Thursday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Don't forget to get your mailbag questions in for the Friday show. We're going to be taping that at some point today. So if you got a question, you want to get it to us, you want your pin on the map, go ahead and get those in right at this moment at lockedonneb@gmail.com. That's where you can find us, or perhaps we'll look in the YouTube comments section after this show. Also, you can get us on Twitter. We're there, Locked On NEB. Okay. Big night last night for our baseball team, as you mentioned there. Jack Caglione going deep, 466 feet to the base of the center field scoreboard. Did you get awakened by the storms that rolled through eastern Nebraska in the middle of the night? You're looking at me like maybe not. What?
I keep waking up in the middle of the night and having like coughing attacks, fits.
Still not over that College World Series virus.
Yeah, if you guys have been watching the show on YouTube over the last couple of weeks, like you hopefully haven't been able to hear this, but I mute my mic and I just start ripping off. So in the middle of the night, like consistently one time I'll wake up and I'll just like have a cough thing that I cannot control. But at that time I did realize it was storming last night. So that's how I knew that was happening. I would have figured it out when I woke up this morning, but
I bet your wife loves the middle of the night coughing fit.
Yeah, huge fan. I've had to relocate a couple times, on my own volition, but it's not fun. Not fun right now.
Yeah, the thunderstorm it got going pretty good around 2-3 a.m. Was just wanting the power to stay on. It was windy enough that I had some concerns for a few minutes that we were gonna lose power, but that didn't happen in our part of the city. So it's been a rough week for storms around the country. Definitely our thoughts with everybody in Texas over what's going on. Been a kind of an awkward and very sad backdrop for Big 12 media days, which have been going on in the state of Texas, and all of the coaches and the commissioner have come in and offered their well wishes for the people of Central Texas. So they're going through much more than anything that this drama has in the college football world has provided. So we'll continue to think about them, and hopefully people are out there helping. Wednesday, Big 12 Media Days continued to be kind of the gift that has kept on giving. So Deion Sanders was on stage. We're going to do something here that we do occasionally on the Locked On Nebraska podcast and talk about Deion Sanders. This is one of those things that tends to fire up the audience, right?
Well, I think it's interesting because Nebraska now all of a sudden doesn't play them this year.
Right. It was easier last year and the year before.
Yeah. In each of the first 2 years of his Colorado coaching career, Nebraska's been on the schedule. So I think it like maybe the temperature is a little bit hotter. Now I find it I don't know what the right word is. It's very different watching Deion Sanders this year because you can kind of just sit back and like, wow, this is really entertaining. Before if you're looking at it through the Nebraska prism, you're like, what in the world is this guy talking about? Is this going to work? And now they've got some, they've got games underneath their belt, and you kind of know how it goes from a football standpoint. They're not like really good, but they're not horrible. So you can kind of just sit back and watch this. And man, I would just implore everybody, if you come across, if you find out that Deion Sanders is talking publicly in a press conference format, just go to YouTube and pull it up and watch it. And yesterday's press conference at Big 12 Media Days yet again did not disappoint.
It did not. Those are the words I was going to use. It did not disappoint. So he gets on stage and goes through a lot of thanks. He's very thankful to lots of people. Thank the commissioner. He had a moment where he stopped in the middle of the press conference and made clear that he had forgotten when he got on stage to thank Michael Irvin, who came with him to the Big 12 Media Days.
Right in the middle of the question, he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I love Michael Irvin.
Love you to life. Yeah. Love you to life."
That's his new thing. I love you. So he's not saying love you to death anymore. No. He's saying love you to life now, which is great.
Yeah, I like it. So Deion's had a medical situation that's kept him in Texas, which is his home away from home, since April. He has not been in Boulder. So that's an interesting dynamic for the head coach. Imagine if Matt Rule had been out of state since April. But he's been governing from afar. And to be honest, Deion Sanders is a head coach who runs his program in a different way than a lot of head coaches. And it's been effective by Colorado standards for sure over the last couple of years. Generated a Heisman Trophy winner last year. They've been very much in the public eye. I believe I heard him mention in his opening statement yesterday that Colorado, for the first time in school history, and this has a lot to do with the TV contract, a lot more to do with the TV contract than anything else, was on national TV every week in every game. And a lot of them were featured games on major networks. So they're getting the attention that Colorado knew it was going to get when it hired Deion Sanders. His press conference was amazing. He required that the opening question go to a female reporter. So that put the person holding the mic out there in the audience on notice, like, go find a woman who will ask a question.
Yeah, you got to be on your toes if you're a moderator for those
right
things.
You can't go to like Max Olson if Coach Prime is up there on the stage going, no, I want to talk to one of the ladies in the room. So you got it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as she started asking her question, it was love your hair from Sanders on stage. Just great. And then the second question went to David Ubben, my colleague at The Athletic, and Coach Prime cut him off to let him know that he wasn't going to give him much of an answer because The Athletic gets all up in that bull junk. And
so he remembers, like, he remembers, I don't know that he remembers like names of who said things about him.
Correct.
He remembers outlets. There was later on, because he's in the Dallas area and he played for the Cowboys. And later on, somebody asked a question from one of the local Dallas TV affiliates. Is like, man, you guys killed or a newspaper is like, man, you guys killed me when I was here. And the dude was like, hey man, I just got here. Like, I just started working here. It's a very, it almost feels like not to, it's entertaining. There's no doubt about it, but it does feel like an SNL skit at times when you're watching, or you could make an SNL skit out of it when Deion.
They could do a great one. Just to, you would only have to I don't even think you'd have to exaggerate it at all. Like
no.
Well, he had the episode last year in Boulder with, I believe it was CBS, where an affiliate from like a Denver or Boulder CBS station was asking him a question, and Prime was mad at CBS, like the national TV network, and took it out on the guy.
Like, you know what you did, and the guy's like, no, I don't. I don't know what I did.
So if you just took a job at like, some outlet in Dallas, and when he played for the Cowboys, that media organization was not kind to him or the team. Like, it don't matter. It doesn't matter that I just started, coach. I just got here a month ago.
Yeah.
Nope. Too bad.
But he does love all of his fellow coaches.
Especially Joey McGuire.
He loves him some Joey McGuire, and he requested that Joey McGuire send him some of that money that he is spending to get football players at Texas Tech, which is an interesting proposal.
Joey, when he was a high school coach, coached Deion Sanders Jr. That's where their relationship began. And, hey, now they're head coaches in the same league. So yeah, that's one thing that Matt Rule and Deion Sanders have in common is their love for Joey McGuire. Of course, Matt Rule gave Joey McGuire his entry into college coaching as an assistant at Baylor. And then Joey took it from there and is now running things quite well at Texas Tech, at least on the NIL rev share, like, let's get noticed side. He is. It would be either one of those guys, since we're talking about Joey McGuire and since we're talking about Deion Sanders. And if we're driving you crazy, Nebraska fans, like, let's just tie it up with this. Well, Nebraska, Colorado in a bowl game this year. Do you have an appetite for that? Or Nebraska, Texas Tech, which would be a totally different storyline, but either one of those I think would make for good content.
Or Nebraska, UCF. Do we just throw a third in there?
Yeah. That
which one's
that one would be a different level. That
be a pretty big deal.
There are some bowl executives out there this morning in bowl land with their jackets on, thinking, all right, what can we do to make who can we make a trade with in the conference affiliations to make this Big 10, Big 12 battle work where Nebraska and UCF are playing in a bowl game?
Yeah, the dudes from the Rate Bowl are like, come on. We gotta get 6 wins out of each of these teams. And if Nebraska's got 9 or something like that, we'll just overpay and go grab them. And everybody comes to Phoenix and has a good time.
With the press conference where they do like the head coaches, even if they didn't have a head coaches press conference at that bowl game, some bowl games, like the day before the game, they get both head coaches together, put them on one stage, and like all the media is there, and they got lots of like bowl reps who do totally unnecessary things that are just to entertain themselves. And they pat themselves on the back, whatever. The Pinstripe Bowl was the epitome of that because the Yankees run it, and the Yankees just love the Yankees, which we probably talked about back in December. So even if you don't have that event, you would have to institute it if Nebraska and UCF played in a bowl game. And what would like the feeling in the room be with and Rule and Frost, I think, get along just fine. Like they've spent time together in coaching circles and there was a crossover there. For a year or two when Temple and UCF were in the same league and they coached those schools. So they'd be fine with it, but everybody else would be looking at it like, oh my God, look at that.
It'd be weird.
What kind of questions would you ask?
Yeah,
it would be great. It would be great. Let's make it happen.
I agree.
Nebraska's not in the college football playoff, and we'll finish this segment with that real quickly. Joel Klatt of Fox, the man from Fox, he listed the 10 most likely teams to make their first college football playoff appearance in 2025. And it goes like this: Illinois, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Miami, Iowa, Missouri, USC, Kansas State, Florida, Nebraska.
Well, a lot of teams have made the playoff by this point. So we're kind of, I don't think we're running short on Power 5 teams who haven't made the playoff yet, but like that list is a lot smaller than it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's not like the who's who of the Power 4.
No, those teams have already had an appearance over this period of time. So
what do you think about Illinois leading that list?
Yeah, I mean, they're like, if you just take the highest ranked teams in this year's top 25 who haven't had a playoff appearance yet, Illinois is probably the top one. I mean, that's like a preseason top 15-ish type of team. So that makes sense for them to be there. I still am not all the way in on that deal this year, but they are certainly one of the most likely this year. And you could see a world where Nebraska jumps up and wins 10 games. So throw them on the list too.
That's what Klatt said. He had them at 10-2. And he talked about if Nebraska can get over the hurdle against USC, like that's the game he identified was a USC game. If they can get over that hurdle, then he believes that Nebraska will be 10-2. That's a pretty big voice in the sport who's like firmly in the camp that Nebraska is going to turn a corner this year in a big way. So something to ponder going into these next couple of weeks.
Quick break, and we will take a quick dip into the Bowl of Fascination when we return. All right. This is day 4 as we reach into the bowl. We'll make this one quick here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. We've covered Cortez Mills, Sierra Wright, Riley Van Poppel, each of which have won the lottery and have their names picked out of the Bowl of Fascination. And Mitch is going to dive in today. He's going to pick out a name. And let's see who he gets. Yeah, who do we have?
There's my hand right there. Okay. Yeah. I have found a piece of paper that has Carter Nelson's name on it. Carter Nelson, sophomore tight end / hybrid tight end / wide receiver, listed at tight end now, played wide receiver as a true freshman, former top 100 signee for the Huskers out of Ainsworth, Nebraska. So what will Nebraska get from the ultra talented athlete who was sought after by the likes of Alabama and Notre Dame when he was playing 8-man football in the state of Nebraska. Is this the year that Carter Nelson becomes more than just a toy, like a little toy that is used occasionally within the offensive system? Because that's what it was last year. I think there were a couple things last year that were working against him. One, it was the adjustment to playing not just college football and in the Big Ten, but just 11-man football. And he had to gain size. Those being the two biggest things. I think it was more of an adjustment for him than it is for most freshmen. They found ways, little moments to get him included.
Yeah, it was really highly specific. You know, the stuff he was asked to do last year, you could tell he didn't have a full grip of exactly what was going on, and probably not quite the skill set to be an every down, type of player yet. But that you would expect that to develop, who's, from a guy who's a borderline, 5-star, like you said, recruited by everybody. This is a great Bowl of Fascination pick, because I think he's really fascinating. Like you said, coming off of last year and the little flashes of what he was able to give you, offseason surgery, haven't heard a lot about him like this
hip surgery
summer. Right. That's a significant deal. And he goes into this, he goes into the weapons drawer, I think, for Nebraska. And I got to be honest, he's not one of the first guys I think about. Is probably not one of the first 4 or 5 guys that I think about as far as offensive weapons are concerned this year. I guess that is due to the fact that he doesn't have a lot of production underneath his belt. But if he starts to, get close to that ceiling of what people expect to, from him, or have a breakout year this year, that's a really significant deal for Nebraska's offense. I mean, he's got a chance to really raise the ceiling a little bit if he can, if he could start to sniff what people think, thought about him as a recruit.
This is where I think you're really glad that you have Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator, because one thing that he's good at is having the ability to run the offense and do all of the things that are the bread and butter for the offense while not losing sight of a way to take it to the next level with something that the defense is not expecting. And some coordinators are good at that. Some play callers are good at that. Some of them, you talk about it during the week of practice, you practice things, but then when you get into the heat of a game, especially if it's a competitive game, a close game, like those kind of extra little bonuses that can take your offense over the next hill to a level that's going to help you win games, like they become more difficult to feature. I think that's the case with most offensive coordinators that we've seen come through Nebraska, in my opinion. And we'll see. We've only had the Dana Holgorsen experience for 4 games, but I believe that he will be an OC, and has in his past, even when he was a head coach and had that on his plate too. I think he's somebody who is going to be able to manage calling a close game, a competitive game, and go every once in a while and bring you something that, wow, that was out of left field, and that really hit, and just have the feel for. You have to have a feel, for the right moment to be able to bring that out. And Carter Nelson is right in that. He's up that alley. Like, he's the kind of guy that you can bring out and just hit a defense in the back of the head with a hammer when they weren't looking.
Yeah, it'll be really fascinating. Is he more is the Bowl of Fascination? Is he more in the Heinrich Haarberg category of like, hey, this is a gadget, and you can, like you just explained, you could bring him in for a play or two and sort of, whoa, surprise. That's something that you don't normally get. Or could he turn himself into closer to an every down type of player? And what is the shape of that? Is it a tight end? Is it a a weapon on the edge? Is it a wide receiver? Like what is it? So I think there's a lot of different ways it could go with Nelson. But like you said, you do have the flexibility given the pieces you already have on the offense.
I think some of that, and whether he plays in an every down kind of situation, or he's a specialized weapon, and he can still be very effective as a specialized weapon. You just have to use him regularly. A lot of that's going to depend on like the development of their wide receiver group, because will Nebraska go with 2 tight end sets? I think Matt Rule would like to do that. They'd like to get big. They like and they have athletic tight ends in Nelson and in Haarberg, who can create big time matchup problems. But what's going on at the wide receiver spots, and even to a lesser degree at the running back spots. You're not going to see a lot of two back from Nebraska, I don't think, but sometimes you might, especially if you've got a guy like Isaiah Mosey who's back there as a hybrid player himself, playing some running back. But if you go two tight end somewhat regularly, like 6-7 times a game, then I think, or more, then I think Carter Nelson fits into the mix, because Luke Lindenmeyer is the guy who's going to get the most reps at tight end. He's your traditional standard tight end. And then I think you look at Harburg as the guy who can do a lot and do things well and have that extra athleticism. And then there's Nelson. So like the way that the offense unfolds, receivers and running backs are going to dictate a little bit about how much freedom Holgorsen has to bring Nelson in those kind of sets that he can do damage in.
Yep, intriguing, but it's not the Bowl of Intrigue. It's the Bowl of Fascination, and we are fascinated by Carter Nelson. More tomorrow, or actually, we'll probably skip it tomorrow because
we will. Yeah, we should have done 2 today, but it's too late, so we'll catch up next week.
Yeah, we'll have all the time in the world for your mailbag questions. Don't forget to get those in, and we'll have a mailbag episode coming your way tomorrow morning. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show with Brian Smith. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.